Hello and welcome to another edition of the LaLanne Pass It On podcast, where we talk to health and fitness professionals who are passing on Jack's mission to help people help themselves. And my name is Greg Justice, and as always, the real star of the show, Elaine, LaLanne is here. How you doing today, Elaine?
Big star. Yeah. Uh, today we're going to have on Pete Holman, and he is something because, he's an inventor. And so what I've got to find out all the stuff he's invented, and I want to know how he got started. So you tell us about him first, and then I'll pop in and ask the first question. Oh, ready, Pete?
I am ready. I was born ready, Lala.
Well, as Elaine said, Pete Holman is a physical therapist, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, an international presenter, author, fitness product inventor, and a former US National TaeKwon-Do champion. His dedication to advancing the fitness industry and his entrepreneurial spirit has inspired him to create multiple products that impact fitness enthusiasts and athletes throughout the world. It is a pleasure to have Pete Holman as our special guest today.
Hey,
Yay!
man, this makes my day, makes my week, makes my month, makes my year to be talking to really, and I'm not embellishing this, folks. These are the two fittest people I know in the world for their age demographic. So hats off to you. And hey, Lala just did a high kick there. Hats off to you, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you, Pete. And I'm enthralled with all the stuff you've done. And first of all, did you start out as a physical therapist? Because I want to get into your inventions, and so does Greg. But first of all, let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what really inspired my career was my martial arts. So when I was a high school athlete, I was a good little athlete, but I had developed late and I was kind of awkward. And one of my coaches in my junior year described me as a giraffe that was shot with a tranquilizer dart, which was not the most glowing, a compliment I'd ever had. But so I was kind of growing into my body. By the time I was 20, I found working out, which we'll talk about that in spades. I found working out and I grew into my body and I got strong and I got powerful and I got fast. And I tried out for a Taekwondo class and I fell in love with it. And I found out that my sport was Taekwondo and martial arts. And I wanted to be the best athlete on the mat at all times. So I really dove into strength and conditioning and tried to understand kinesiology and biomechanics and anatomy and physiology and how to be a better athlete on the mat. And that's what launched my personal training career. Now, the bad side was I was constantly injured because I competed so much. And then I wanted to learn how to rehabilitate myself. And that's what launched my physical therapy career. So yeah, it started with martial arts, led into personal training, and then led into physical therapy.
What motivated you?
Well, to be honest, and this is not to be trite, but Jack LaLanne was a big influence of mine. When I was growing up, I had 3 or 4 fitness icons that I looked up to, and they were more sports athletes. So it was Bruce Lee, it was Muhammad Ali. So I always had in me like this fighting spirit. And then of course, Michael Jordan, everybody was infatuated with Michael Jordan, but there was an outlier, a guy that kind of caught my interest that came in late for me. And that was Jack LaLanne. And Jack LaLanne, he had something a little different than the other folks. He actually had some knowledge behind what he was doing. He understood strength and conditioning. He understood nutrition. He understood mindset and how psychologically how to improve yourself and your performance and your well-being by having positive mindset. And so Jack was a huge influence of mine. And although at the time I was opposed to green drinks, because when you're 16 years old, 17, you don't do anything healthy. You just think you're Superman. Well, guess what I just had this morning? A green drink. I have a green drink, some kind of juice every single day. And Jack basically, invented that.
Yeah, since he as a kid, as a teenager, he got into nutrition because of Paul Bragg, and he had one of those juicers that you push down. You juice. That's how he had one of the very first ones. So he's been juicing he's been juicing all his life. And so when we got into the juicer, it just was natural for him.
Yeah, I literally just did it 20 minutes ago, and there's something interesting about juicing, and I always tell people have a salad a day. And it's not just the nutrient value. When you do something healthy and almost like overly healthy, like a juice is just all micronutrients and the green stuff, and it doesn't taste that great. But something happens psychologically, and you know that you're pouring into yourself the most healthy version of nutrients that you can pour into yourself. And then it stimulates a positive thought in your mind that, hey, I did something really healthy for myself today. Maybe what if I did something else healthy? What if I had a little walk? What if I did a little exercise? What if I had a beautiful conversation with my mom or my dad or my sister or my brother? And the next thing you know, it's just this kind of spark that ignites a flame that turns into a wildfire, and you become a different person. So, but it always starts with one little step. The journey of 1,000 miles always starts with one step. So whether it's a nutrition, whether it's exercise, that's how Jack, I think, had such a great influence on the world.
He said everything starts between your ears.
Two quick notes on this between this conversation. Right over Elaine's head, you can see the original juice machine.
Oh, can you see it? That's
Yes.
a commercial juicer.
Yeah, commercial juicer there.
Yeah.
And then the other note I made was the connection. A lot of people don't know this, the connection between Bruce Lee and Jack LaLanne.
There's a documentary, and there's a book too, being done right now by a friend of mine who is she's in fact they should interview you about your karate, but Jack was the guy that trained Bruce Lee in not in karate but in bodybuilding was a friend of a kid that came to Jack's gym when he was like 14 years old, and he really didn't have a father. He looked up to Jack. Jack took him in the gym and trained him, and his name was Alan Joe, and in Oakland, California. And then later on in life, when Bruce came over to the United States, Alan Joe was Chinese American, and he met Bruce Lee, and they became friends. And Bruce moved to Oakland, California, and then Alan Joe trained him. So it goes from Jack trained Alan Joe, and then Alan Joe trained Bruce Lee. And there's going to be a documentary on it. Lana Kim and her husband are doing it. So it's going to be a good.
Well, and Elaine, it's fascinating that if you look at Bruce Lee's his physique change from the time when Alan Joe worked with him, from one film to the next, it changed dramatically. And it was a lot of the principles that Jack gave to him that he trained Bruce on. I thought you'd appreciate that, Pete.
Oh, I love that story. And there's probably another story. They talk about Kevin Bacon and like 6 degrees of separation, how Kevin Bacon's always associated with something or somebody. Well, there's probably 8 degrees of separation with Jack LaLanne. He probably has his finger in something across the globe on any given industry. So that's a great story. And I did not know that.
Well, we know that there is definitely 6 degrees of separation when you look at every piece of equipment invented from the beginning of the modern fitness industry that goes back to Jack. And I think this is a
It was
good
back into the
transition.
late 30s.
Yeah, the late 30s. And I mean, it's fascinating because I've told you this many times, Pete. I've known you for a long time now. And I've told you this many times that there's something about you that reminds me of Jack. You're charismatic, good on camera. You have an inventor's brain and you have a passion for what you do. And I want to talk about your invention career. And I know it goes back to like 2008. Is that the time you invented your first product?
And
Correct.
what was it, and what prompted you to do it, and what motivated you to do it?
So my first product is very little known. It was called the functional training rack. And I was working in a physical therapy clinic in Aspen, Colorado. And if you've ever been to a sports medicine physical therapy, like an outpatient clinic, they love therapeutic exercise. And we love this about them. They have BOSU balls and foam rollers and stretchy resistance cords and tilt boards and wobble boards and medicine balls. But the problem is it's always strewn around the room. You can't find anything. It looks like a hurricane went through there. So one day I got so frustrated I couldn't find a wobble board. I said, you know what? I'm making a rack that stores all this stuff. And I don't know. It was just a problem I saw, and I was kind of pissed off about it. I went to a fabricator in Aspen and I said, hey, can you bend some steel and weld this up? And it ended up being like a medicine ball rack, kind of on steroids. So behind the medicine balls were little slots for tilt boards and wobble boards and BOSU balls. And at the top of the medicine ball rack were little antennas that came out, and they had little J hooks on them. And on the J hooks, you stored elastic resistance cords. And then there was canisters that kind of came out to the side, and you could put a foam roller or a yoga mat stretched up. And it kind of evolved into actually holding stability balls and Swiss balls. And I had this pretty innovative hoop design, which was literally just an arm with a circle on it. And you just put the stability ball on there. Before 2008, you never saw a stability ball on a circular arm like that. And so that was my first one. Now, launching it was really challenging. And this is what's so impressive about Jack and what he did so many years prior with the leg extension machine and the dual adjustable cable crossover machine and the Smith press and all the other stuff he worked on is once you make the thing, then you have to sell it. You have to produce it. You have to manufacture it. You have to kit it and fulfill it. And then you have to market it. And then you have to sell it. And you have to buy inventory. And all this stuff it's like launching an entire business out of your garage. And if you don't know what you're doing, which remember, I'm a physical therapist and strength coach. I don't have an MBA from Stanford or even a business degree from Columbia. I'm just I'm great at orthopedic physical therapy, but not a business. And so it was the school of hard knocks on my first product, but that's where it all started.
And I love that it was necessity that brought that out.
Right. Well, speaking of racks, Jack, if he had all his weights, every weight, you should see the weights they still have, and they're all chromed, and they're on racks. And if you didn't put that back in the rack, you're in trouble.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's old school gym etiquette. Back in the day, I was at a gym called Fitness America. And there was a dude that ran Fitness America. He might have been on some performance enhancing drugs. I don't know. I can't prove that, but he had a quick trigger and a quick switch. And if you did not rack a weight, he would yell from the front desk all the way across the weight room. Hey, re-rack your weight. I mean, everybody stopped and looked, and that was the last time you did not re-rack your weights.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, hey, so necessity created that first product. And I love the story of the Rip Core that is now known as the TRX Rip Trainer. And the story behind that comes from necessity. And why don't you share a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Yeah, that was a really fun story because I was training an X Games athlete in Aspen by the name of Mike Schultz, and he was a snowmobile racer. So I was doing all these traditional exercises with him, Copenhagen side planks and chops and lifts and pull-off presses and medicine ball throws. And for some reason, I just felt like something was missing. And I was laying in my bed and I looked up at my closet rod, and it just came to me like a light bulb. And I said, that looks like a snowmobile handle. And I ripped all my clothes off the closet rod, grabbed the closet rod, went down into my garage, put an eye bolt into one end, attached a resistance cord to the closet rod, and then attached that end of the cord to a ski rack in my garage. And I started to put load through the system, which was loaded on one side. Remember, so you're holding the bar, there's a cord on one side. And I started to steer the system like I was on a snowmobile. And right away, I felt all the muscles in my pelvic girdle, in my torso, in my arms, in my chest, in my back, and my shoulders, all the opposing muscles, the reciprocal muscles, everything lit up. Even my feet were challenged because there was a balance component. And right away, I was sweating and panting. And then, of course, I got a little bored with the snowmobile racing. And I thought, what about Taekwondo? You know, how could this help facilitate me with a push-pull and a striking motion? And it was really hard to control the end range and then kind of find a specific target at the end range. And I realized it's great for speed and kind of coiled energy training. And that was the start of it. I trained my guy, Mike Schultz, for 2 weeks with this prototype. And when he left back to Minnesota, he said, "Hey, where do I get one of these?" And I said, "Wait a minute, I think I've got a product here." And it turned, it's kind of the product that keeps on giving, because it started out, I called it the Core 10 Trainer. Then I made a company called the Ripcore FX. We licensed it to TRX and it became the TRX Rip Trainer. Now I'm with a whole new company and we're focused on golf, and it's called the Golf Forever Swing Trainer. So it just keeps iterating and evolving. And the latest iteration, the Golf Forever Swing Trainer, is just a magnificent product. And I'm very, very pleased with it. And I'm happy that people are finally understanding that there is some importance to training in the rotational or what's called the transverse plane of motion.
Did you ever hear the name Glamour Stretcher?
I did not.
Well, in 1950s, Paul Bragg, we were having dinner with Paul Bragg one night, and he had this little piece of rubber like this, and he was going like this. "Jack, what would you do with this?" And Jack said, "Oh, I could think of a lot of things to do with it." And so we're the first one who had the stretch bands.
Right here, Elaine.
Well, there's one. There's
Hey, Pete, next time I see, I'll bring this and let you play with it. So yeah, this is 1954, and then it evolved with the handle, little wider handle, because it was kind of abrasive on the hand. Second generation had a flatter handle. But yeah, it's
you have the record
about the cord, Pete. That's what I was thinking about too. The
and that Jack designed that and a lot of stuff, and he had the stretch bed. He had a roll and stretch where you sit on the floor, you put your feet in the roll and stretch. There it is, right there.
Here's the row and stretch. There's your original Concept 2 rowing machine.
Yeah, because he was big on rowing machines.
Lala, it's very interesting, and most people won't understand this, or they haven't heard it framed up this way, but elastic resistance is fundamentally different than free weights. Free weights is like a dumbbell or a barbell or even a cable column that has a selectorized stack of weight plates. Those are, well, maybe that's a selectorized weight plate system, but they're all focused on gravitational loads, which is axial loading from high to low. Elastic resistance is uniquely different from that type of resistance training because it doesn't care what force vector you're aligned at. It can be high to low, it could be horizontal, which means you can hook it up midway up a wall and then you can rotate with it. And now you have load coming from a different force vector, which is really important for sports, whether you're a tennis player or a pickleball player or a martial artist. It also has a unique property in that when you stretch it out, there's what's called stored kinetic potential energy in that system. It's like a rubber band, you stretch it out and that's when it's powerful. Well, to stretch it out and to recoil it, it takes a lot of control. That's called eccentric control. So now you're overloading the system with a rapid stretch, and then there's all this energy that you have to control back to the start position, and it creates very dynamic exercises. And I've used them for years in physical therapy, but also for sports performance in my martial arts. And they continue to develop and evolve. But I didn't know it started with Jack LaLanne. Gosh darn it.
Everything started. It's the 6 degrees of Jack LaLanne. We're going to start a new movement of that.
That's true.
Hey, Pete, Hey, Pete, before we move on from that, I want to point out that with the Golf Forever swing trainer,
Oh,
actually the
wait a
number.
minute before you say that. Also, we had Jerry Barber was a friend, and so Jack in those days in the '60s developed a swing. I forgot the name of a swing something.
Swing trainer, yeah, and it's similar in nature. There's a
And it still stretched, and it was another stretch.
yeah. Yeah, so it was the Golf Forever before Golf Forever. But I wanted to point out that the number one golfer in the world is Scotty
Yes,
Scheffler. That's right, and
Scotty
he is a
Scheffler.
Golf Forever swing trainer user.
He is, and what's really neat about that is a lot of these professionals, you'll say, hey, you give them an 8-figure contract, and they'll wear a watch or a shirt, or they'll do anything for that kind of money. Scotty Scheffler basically came to us and said, hey, I've been using this product. How do I get involved? And we didn't have the money to give him 8 figures. We were just launching the company and trying to sell it and market it. We said, we're so sorry we don't have money, but we could offer you equity shares in the company. You could be a part owner. And he said, that's great. That's what I want. And so he is really invested in this product, in this company. And most importantly, he uses it every day to warm up before he golfs.
I love that. I didn't know that. That's a great story, and I'm glad to hear that he's a part of it because he's a believer. He believes in the product. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure we pointed that out.
Gary Player is a good friend, and he used a lot of Jack's stuff. He really he always said on my 90th birthday, he said, Jack didn't get enough credit for what he's given to the fitness industry.
Yeah, Gary Player's a big fitness buff, and
Oh,
still
he's really a fitness buff.
Yeah.
What's your
Yes.
handicap?
Oh,
Oh my gosh. My handicap is that I try to play golf. I mean, if I shoot under 100, I'm just having a marvelous day.
Yeah.
For me, the wonderful thing about golf is that I typically, as an athlete, I took things up really fast. I mean, I played high-level competitive soccer as a youth. I played lacrosse, basketball, baseball.
You're a natural athlete.
I was a natural. I could do anything. I can do anything. I mean, I'm braggadocious
You
about it.
everything. You
should see
do
me
everything
move.
accurate, good, but you're not a champion on any of them, right?
oh, he is though. He was a US National champion, Elaine.
Yeah, I've got
In Taekwondo.
the medals to prove it. But
is that golf?
no, but well,
Taekwondo.
that's the good news is that I'm a great mover and a great athlete. The bad news is it doesn't seem to translate to golf. So I don't know what's wrong, but golf is the hardest sport that I've ever engaged in. And now it's become a very much of a challenge for me. And I love that I'm taken out of my comfort zone and I have to learn new movement patterns and new ways to think. And it's a very calming sport. Typically, I get pretty amped up for things I engage in, mogul skiing and martial arts. Golf is the opposite. You have to really calm yourself down, and there's a lot of
I'm a golfer, so I took up golf at 35 and played it until I was 94. So now I'm
that's
98.
wonderful. Yeah.
I don't play golf anymore.
It's just a wonderful sport, and like you said, it's a life sport. It's something that you can start. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and I just started in the last few years, and it's great. It's great time. It does take a lot of time, so you can't be working 12-hour days and think you're going to be a golfer.
Golf teaches you about you. It really does.
Yeah,
golf
it's
is like life. You can't take the shot over.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's transition, talk a little bit about the Nautilus glute drive, because that was a big, I think a big shift and probably a big breakthrough in your invention business. And when Nautilus came along and licensed it, I assume that's what happened.
Yes.
But tell us the story of the Nautilus glute drive.
Yeah, the Nautilus glute drive, for those that don't know, it's a plate-loaded hip thrust machine. So a hip thrust is basically like a glute bridge. If you're laying on your back and your knees are bent and you lift your hips up off the turf, that's called a glute bridge. And around 2006, a guy by the name of Brett Contreras really popularized what he was calling a hip thrust. So you're, instead of laying on the ground, you put your back on an elevated platform like a bench, and then you drop your hips down and you got more range of motion, which makes a lot of sense. Well, then he thought, I want, this is too easy. I need to put weights across my waist. And so he got this barbell and started loading up a barbell, and he had all his clients doing barbell hip thrusts, and it became a really popular movement. The challenge with the barbell hip thrust is that you need a bench, you need a barbell, you need the weights. It's a cumbersome setup. It takes up a lot of space on the floor. And so I thought there's got to be a better way, and I created something called the glute drive, which is a small machine that is a hip thrust, but it's kind of cool. It has an articulating back pad. So there's a fulcrum kind of around where your shoulder blades are, and you lay back on this bench. It's very comfortable. It helps you with kind of a hip hinging motion, and then you just put weights on the side, and it's a tight, small footprint. And I brought it to Nautilus, and they loved it. And they started to producing it, and they made a better version, so it's really bulletproof. And it was my first kind of commercial gym product. You know, to make a product for the home or the consumer is one thing. To make it for a commercial outfit where you're going to have hundreds of users potentially in a day on your product, that's a lot of wear and tear. So you think about 24-hour fitness or Gold's Gym or World's Gym or Crunch or UFC, or these places have thousands of members, and the equipment gets beat up. So we got this Nautilus glute drive licensed, and I asked Jeff Diltz, who was the product innovator at the time, head of innovation at Nautilus and Core Health. I said, how many units do you think will sell the first year? And he said, well, it's a new piece of commercial strength. There's a slow adoption phase. And he says, maybe a couple hundred. At which point I was pretty dejected, right? I thought, because I'm doing the royalties in my head. I'm like, 200? Why did I even do this, Well, sure enough, I knew something that he didn't, and that is hip thrusts are hot. The glutes are important, and this is going to sell. And we ended up doing 2,000 in our first year. And now there's a hip thrust on every continent, maybe not Antarctica, but polar bears, watch out, we're coming for you. There's hip thrusts all over the world, from Istanbul, Turkey, to Belgrade, Serbia, to Auckland, New Zealand, to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to San Jose, California. There's a hip thrust, so a Nautilus glute drive. So I'm really proud of that machine, and it continues to do great.
It's the #1 selling in their product line, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It is. They sell more glute drives than lat pull downs or chest presses or anything of that nature. So it's really been a tremendous addition to their product line. And as a company, Nautilus, Arthur Jones, he's not Jack LaLanne, but he had some great innovative ideas, and he started really.
Oh, he sure did. And Jack, he flew.
They were friends.
Jack was in Florida one time, and he says, Jack, I want you to, and met him, and he says, I want you to come over to my alligator farm. And then he says, I'm going to fly you back to Los Angeles. You cancel your flight to Los Angeles, and I'm flying you back. So that's when Jack and Arthur got together.
Oh, that's great. Like I said, 6 degrees of separation. Who does not Jack have an influence on? That's crazy. But yeah, so they're known for innovation, and it was really thrill for me to be part of that innovation. And that's what my whole thing is about. And that's why I love Jack LaLanne. He's an innovator. He was the first in our industry. That's why he's called the Godfather of fitness. And a lot of people don't realize all the products that he innovated, but it's one thing to talk the talk and to scream health and fitness from the mountaintops. It's another thing to get in the lab and start creating things that are going to fundamentally impact people all over the world and help with their health and their wellness and their vitality and their fitness. And Jack's done that, and hopefully I can, do part to follow in his footsteps.
But he never patented anything, he just, and so all that stuff that he invented, we never made one penny on. But that, that's all right. It helped the industry get started, and that's all he cared about. I want to help people to help themselves. And if I heard it once, I heard it trillions of times. Dinner time, and you have dinner with him, he talks about fitness. So he believed really from the heart. And
Yep.
when I when I read your bio, I said, "Oh my gosh, he reminds me of Jack and all his ideas."
Yeah. Well, and wait, Elaine, and we're not done. The
Oh
next product
yeah,
is the Escape Barrow. Tell us about that, how that came to be, and a little bit about that product.
This is the most simplistic product you guys have ever heard of. So when I was growing up in Littleton, Colorado, I lived on a small ranch. And one of the things my mom did to help supplement her income was to board a couple horses. So we had, at any one time, 3 to 4 horses on our little ranch and had like a little acre of land. Well, guess whose job it was to take care of the horses and to clean up the stalls and to fill road base in the stalls when they got kind of scooped out? It was this kid's. So I used a wheelbarrow every day to haul stuff around. And even though I wasn't doing traditional strength training when I was 14, 15, 16, I was doing this farm work. I carried a wheelbarrow and it built my grip strength. And what I realized later in life, as I studied kinesiology, is that your grip strength is a limiting factor in everything else. Greg, American Ninja, champion. I don't need to tell you, if you don't have grip strength, you have nothing. So later I thought, I was in the gym once and I was doing some farmers walks with kettlebells, right? So these big heavy kettlebells, great exercise. You just grab them and walk back and forth down the track. And then there was a sled and I would push the sled and I did these circuits. And I thought there should be a machine to do both of these. And then the wheelbarrow just came to, I'm like, why isn't there a wheelbarrow where you can easily load weight plates? So instead of having a bunch of kettlebells, you just load whatever weight you want on the wheelbarrow. And then if you put little sled runners on the bottom, you could push it and drag it like a sled. And that turned into something called the Escape Barrow, which is licensed to Escape Fitness. And it's just a really simple, slick product that you can push, pull, and carry around and get farm strong.
And I've used it. It's a great
see
product.
how easy it is.
But yeah. I mean, sometimes the simpler, the better. And it's a great
Jack
product.
always said to keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and then the most recent product launch. And Elaine and I were there for the product launch because it was at the most recent IDEA World Convention in Los Angeles. And it is another glute product. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is the one I'm most excited about right now because so I did a consumer product, then I did a commercial product, a couple of commercial products. And then what I realized, the consumer industry is really the one where you have the most breadth, right? You can positively impact more people. And Jack LaLanne understood this. So he tried to do things that everybody can do and use, whether it was a juicer or a cable machine. Across the world, you can do those exercises and have that nutritional level. So I thought, if I could do another glute training exercise product, but make it more for the consumers, and I came up with something called the glute slide. It's based loosely on Pilates type movements where you stand on a base platform, one foot's on a base platform, the other leg is on a slide platform, and you push the slide platform away from the base leg, and there's resistance on it. And you can stand front to back to where you do almost like a donkey kick. You can stand sideways where you use your lateral hip muscles. Those are called the high glutes. The problem with Pilates, traditional Pilates exercises, that there's nothing to hold on to. There's no handlebars and there's nothing to push against. And oftentimes you're in socks on top of a Pilates machine. So I thought, if I put handlebars on this slide platform and base platform, and if I put a foot wedge, almost like a starter's block in track and field where a sprinter lines up into, you could push into something solid and generate power and strength in your glutes. And you could hold on to something that would give you stability for your upper body so you weren't focused on balance the whole time. And it's called the glute slide. And I'm just so tickled about it. It's what we found out also is, as we're developing this, I worked with a team out of Minnesota called Heavy Metal Barbell, Greg and Zach Olson, and they've just been phenomenal. And as we started to build the product, it was really geared towards consumers. And we wanted a kind of not cheap, but a really inexpensive product. And what we realized is, to have sturdy handlebars and to have a big beefy foot wedge, you can't do a cheap product. So now what started out as a very inexpensive commercial product is now like a higher end home product that can be also used in a sports performance clinic, in a boutique gym, in a personal trainer studio. I mean, this is a solid piece of equipment. And so I just launched it. Check out gluteslide.com, or I'm on Instagram at gluteslide, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I think it's gonna be the one, you guys. I think it's
Oh,
gonna be the
great.
one.
Well, Jack invented in 1965. I had this big idea of a fitness king, 1 foot square and 7 foot high, and you could do over 200 exercises with it. And you could it goes up and down. You could do your lower body, you could do your upper body by this sliding this up and down. And we sold we sold those to the embassies, but that of course went on. But that's one thing he did patent. But I still have all that book. I'll send you a book on it, so you get a kick out of it, because it's 1 foot. Oh, there it is, the cinematic. That's his book. That book
I've
was
got a book.
cinematic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. An
Yeah.
autographed one.
But
Yep.
if you have that cinematic book, you're gonna like this book that I have on the Fitness King, and how all the parts to it.
What's amazing is companies like Body Solid and Matrix Home Gym, they all have a version of what Jack made kind of for your home, where you can adjust it. You can do pushing and pulling and squatting and lunging, and rotational exercises for your shoulders. And once again, just tremendous innovation for consumer and commercial gym spaces that your husband had.
What prompted me on this was that you were saying you had, in order for you to, you had to bend something, and then they had to hold on for balance. So when he did this Fitness King, I said, Jack, this is great, and I'm doing my leg, but I need something to hold on to. So he goes down, and within an hour or two, he comes back, and on this machine, he's got a little hole, a little metal thing, and a hole in it. Then he's got this bar. It's all bent, and you could hold on. It's like a
Oh,
ballet bar.
balance bar. Yeah.
And so you put it in the hole, and then you can hold on to it while you do your lower body, and then you could even put your leg up and put it on and stretch your leg, and it was amazing.
Can I just make a comment about that, LaLanne? Because that is part of his genius. A lot of times people that are innovators or forward thinkers, they get a little high on themselves, okay? That you have a high sense of regard, your brain's moving at a fast rate of speed. But the true innovators and the best drivers of the industry actually listen to the customer. So what Jack did is he tried something out. He had somebody like you that would, hey, give it a test. Tell me what you think. And instead of arguing with you and saying, no, you don't know what you're doing, he said, oh, that's actually a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Because maybe he was, had a certain body position, or he had a certain strength level where he could do.
Oh, he was very strong. Yeah.
And so so one of the things that I started out with this exercise machine, the glute slide, and I didn't have handlebars on it at the start. And I said, maybe you could put it up against the kitchen countertop, or use a chair to stabilize. And this development team I was working with said, no, it's really got to come with handlebars. And I argued for a few minutes. And then I said, you know what? I think you're right. And which was now a whole redesign process, because to put handlebars in, people don't think it's hard. It's hard to do that. And so you got to listen to your customers. You got to open up your mind and listen to people, and give. A client of mine used to always say, give the customer what they want and you'll get what you want. And so
right.
Jack did that. I'm trying to do that. Here we go.
Jack,
Yes.
in our business, he used to say, remember, the customer is always right, no matter what they say.
Even if they're wrong, they're right.
Even if they're wrong. And we had some people take advantage of it and send over and over and over again, I want my money back for this product. I want my money.
Yeah.
And it's the same person, but we caught them, but
Right, right.
Hey, okay, listen now, one more thing before we wrap this up. We've got to talk about the author that is Pete Holman, because several years ago, Pete came to my business partner and me, Kelly Watson, in Scripter Publishing Group, said, I want to write a book. Now, of course, knowing who Pete Holman is in the industry, I was thinking it had to be about a product launcher or one of his products. But no, it was a fiction book called Cruise. Now, tell me where in the world that comes into the mind of an inventor, a fiction book called Cruise.
That was pure boredom and stupidity, Greg Justice. I was working with TRX at the time, and I was doing a tremendous amount of travel. I mean, I would fly to Thailand, and then I would fly to Cologne, Germany, and then I would fly to Sao Paulo, Brazil. I mean, all I did was fly around and do in-services to trainers, which was wonderful. And all I did was talk about strength and conditioning and kinesiology and biomechanics and sports performance. And it was wonderful. But after doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, your brain just kind of starts to get wonky. And I said, I got to do something that's not related to my industry. And I said, I want to write a story. I'm bored. I want to just play around and start writing a story. And so I thought to myself, well, if I was going to write a story, what would it be about? And of course, it had to be about an underdog. You got to have an underdog in a story. And it's got to be about somebody that's going through tremendous adversity in their life. And so I start to sprinkle that in there. And I said, there's got to be some kind of a sensei, right? Or a guru, like a martial arts guy. And so this story started to come to me, and it's fictional, but it's based loosely on a lot of the things I went through coming up as a young adolescent that developed late, that got picked on, that got bullied in high school, that didn't come into their own until down the road, and went through some different levels of challenges, which we all go through. And I came up with my book called Cruise. And I said to myself, every time I fly across seas, at the start, I'll focus on my presentations and my strength and conditioning. But on the ride home, sometimes 14 hours, you got a long time flying home. I would focus on this fictional character called Cruise. And what started out as just kind of a passion play turned into something that was a burning desire. I'm like, I'm writing this book and it's happening. And just out of complete coincidence, I meet Greg Justice and Kelly Watson, who happen to have a publishing company called Scripter. And I said, this is serendipity. I am in. Tell me where to sign up. And by the way, you think writing a book's easy and you just have a ghostwriter or whatever, and just bang it out. It doesn't work like that. And so this turned into a 7-year project, which really got accelerated with Scripter Publishing, but still, edit after re-edit after re-edit. And finally, Kelly Watson looked at me and said, Pete, you're ready. We're publishing this book. And I tried to chime in. She said, Pete, you're ready. We're publishing this book. And so if you want a fun read, it's probably they're probably giving it away free at this point on Amazon. It's called Cruise by Pete Holman, but pick one up. It's a great story. And if you're a developing athlete, or you work with a developing athlete, or if you work with somebody that's going through some underdog type stuff, it's a pretty fun story. It's a light read.
Oh, great.
And I'm proud of it.
Tell everyone how they can find out more about you, learn about all the amazing things you're doing.
Yeah, I've got a website that really covers my stuff from soup to nuts. It's called ph1performance.com. So PH as in Pete Holman, the number 1, and then performance.com. Of course, I'm on Instagram at Pete Holman 1, and on Facebook at Pete Holman, and on LinkedIn. So, but that PH1 Performance, I think, has all the links. And I was looking at my website the other day, and sometimes, some days you wake up and you feel like you can run through a brick wall. And other days you're a little bit, oh, gee, shucks, golly, I wish I was more advanced at a certain project. And you start feeling like you haven't done enough. Well, sometimes you got to go and read your resume. And I tell this to people all the time, or update your resume and just really go through what you've been through and what you've done in the last 3 years, the 5 years, 10 years. And you start to go, you know what? I'm really a unique snowflake. I got some cool stuff going on here, and I'm gonna conquer the world today. So there you have it.